All right, so have you ever felt like you were clinging to something that just wasn't good for you anymore? Like it's not really serving you.
Oh, absolutely. That's so relatable.
Like it could be a job that you're just dreading every single day, or maybe a grudge that you just can't seem to shake,
Hmm.
or even something as simple as like that pair of jeans in the back of your closet that you're convinced you'll fit back into one day.
Oh, totally. We've all been there.
We're diving deep into that feeling today, that feeling of why it's so hard to just let go, and then even more importantly, how to actually do it. We've got a whole stack of research on this.
Yeah, and it's interesting because letting go, it's definitely not as simple as people make it out to be, is it? It's way more complex than just deciding to do it.
Right. So why is that? Why is it such a struggle for us to let things go, even when we know they're not good for us?
Well, our brains, they crave that sense of control and what feels more controllable than something familiar.
Right. Even if it's a negative familiarity.
Exactly. Familiarity, even if it's negative, can feel safer than the unknown. And that's where the fear comes in.
Okay, I see where you're going with this. So it's like we're choosing the what ifs over the unknown because at least the what ifs are familiar territory.
Exactly. And there's actually a neurochemical element to this too. Studies show that when we let go of something we're attached to, even if it's bad for us, it can trigger a similar stress response in the brain as physical pain.
Wow. So it's not just in our heads, it's like a genuine physiological response.
It really is. But here's the thing. When we cling to things, even out of this fear response, it can actually stop us from experiencing something so much more fulfilling.
Okay, so I'm ready to hear about these benefits. What happens when we finally let go?
Well, letting go isn't really about having less. It's about making space for more.
That's a good way to put it.
It's about shifting from a state of preservation, of holding on tight, to a state of openness and possibility.
I read something interesting about that, actually.
Oh, yeah.
It was about how letting go, the actual act of letting go, can spark creativity.
Oh, interesting. How so?
Yeah, it was saying that when we let go of old ideas, old beliefs, even physical clutter,
Right.
it frees up mental space for new connections and insights to kind of bubble up.
Like decluttering your mind to make room for inspiration.
Exactly. And isn't that what this is all about? Creating space for something new and exciting to come in.
And that ultimately is where I think the real freedom lies.
Freedom. There's something so powerful about that word. But knowing where to even begin, that's the tricky part. Where do we even start with this whole letting go process?
Well, I think it starts with really identifying what's no longer serving you.
Easier said than done sometimes.
Right. It might be obvious, you just know it, like that overflowing closet we talked about.
Yeah.
But then other times it's more like that low hum in the background that we kind of just tune out.
Right, you get used to it. It becomes the new normal.
Exactly. And I think a good question to ask yourself is this adding to my life or is it taking away from my life?
That's a good one.
And it's not always, pleasure versus pain, because something can be bringing us comfort or familiarity, but ultimately it's preventing us from, pursuing a bigger dream or becoming the best version of ourselves.
It's true. And sometimes I think we hold on to things out of, guilt or maybe obligation. Like we think we're supposed to keep doing something even when it's not really working for us anymore.
Absolutely. 100%. Yeah.
Or we're worried about hurting other people's feelings if we make a change.
Yeah. And that's where I think that second step comes in, which is that permission to let go.
Permission to prioritize yourself.
Yes. And that's not selfish.
Right.
It's actually essential. I mean, you can't pour from an empty cup. Right?
Right.
Letting go is an act of self-love. It's recognizing that you deserve to be free from what's weighing you down.
I love that. Permission to prioritize you.
Yeah.
So, okay, we've acknowledged what's not working. We've given ourselves permission to let go of it. But I don't know. I feel like there's still this emotional baggage. Even when you know something is bad for you,
Right.
there can still be some sadness or regret, right? When you finally actually let go.
Oh, 100%.
Yeah.
And that's where we have to talk about grief.
Okay.
Because even when we let go of something that was ultimately harmful, it's normal to feel a sense of loss.
It is.
We're wired to grieve the familiar, even if it wasn't always good for us.
Right. So how do we move through that grief without it, hijacking the whole letting go process?
Yeah, the key is to acknowledge the grief, allow yourself to feel it, but try not to get stuck there. It's like a wave. You just kind of have to let it wash over you, recognize it, and then let it recede.
So it's about finding that balance between honoring your feelings, but not letting them, hold you back from moving forward.
Exactly. And that can take time. It can take some patience, even some self-compassion.
Mm.
You know, it's okay to not be okay sometimes, but the important thing is to kind of keep moving forward.
It's a process.
Yes, exactly. It's a practice, a journey, like you said. And that brings us to the next step, which, can feel like a bit of a leap of faith.
Leap of faith, huh?
Yeah.
That's a loaded term. What does that look like in this context? Because, to be honest, letting go, even when you know it's for the best, it can feel like you're stepping off a cliff without a parachute.
It really can. And that's where trust comes in. Trust in yourself, in your own resilience, your ability to handle whatever comes next.
So we're talking about trusting that there's something on the other side of that cliff, even if we can't see it yet.
Yes. It's like letting go is this act of faith that even though we're releasing something, we're not going to be left empty-handed. Something even better is waiting for us. It's just on the other side of that fear.
That's a good way to think about it. It reminds me of that saying, like, when one door closes, another one opens. But sometimes it's hard to even look for that new door when you're still reeling from the one that just slammed shut.
Oh, definitely, yeah. It takes time, it's a process, and it definitely takes practice. But I think that's where that final step comes in, and that's shifting your focus.
Okay, so how do we do that? How do we shift our focus away from what's gone?
So instead of focusing on what you've let go of, what's no longer there, try to consciously direct your energy towards the possibilities that are now opening up.
So we're talking about taking that feeling of emptiness, that void, and reframing it as an opportunity for growth.
Exactly. You're not losing anything. You're creating space. And that space, that's where the magic happens. It's where new relationships can blossom, new opportunities come up, even like new versions of ourselves can emerge.
I love that. So it's like we're constantly creating space for a more authentic, more fulfilling life.
Yeah.
Just one let go at a time.
Yes, exactly.
This has been amazing, I have to say. I think for me, the biggest takeaway is that letting go, it's not a one and done kind of deal. It's a practice. It's something that we have to actively work at. But those rewards, that freedom, that growth that comes from it, it makes it all worthwhile.
Couldn't have said it better myself. It's a lifelong journey, and it's always available to us.
Always. Well, on that note, I think it's time for me to finally let go of this stress and grab some lunch. Thanks for listening, everyone, and we'll see you next time for another deep dive.